see, the last thing that I want to talk about today has to do with this individual who is claiming to be one of the primary leaders of the Black Lives Matters movement, a man known as Hawk Newsome. Hawk Newsome. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Hawk Newsome. I do not agree with Hawk Newsome at all. I'd never heard of Hawk Newsome up until yesterday.
City Council. There has been a split in the civil rights movement, the African American community, for at least a half a century now, between Malcolm X and By Any Means Necessary on the one hand, and Martin Luther King and working through the system on the other. Didn't MLK get a lot more done in a practical sense?
I believe that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a brilliant strategist, especially in the form of media savvy. But what we have to understand is black people do not trust politicians.
Hawk Newsome, do you realize that by you going on Fox News claiming to be the leader of the Black Lives Matter political movement, by default, you are a politician? Okay? So by you saying Black Americans don't trust politicians, we don't trust you. You didn't think about that, did you? He doesn't speak for me. He doesn't speak for my family. He doesn't speak for a lot of Black Americans. So people out there who are not people of color, keep that in mind when you look at Hawk Newsome. He's about my age. He's 43 years old. He's angry. And I can understand him being angry about some things. I've been angry over the years when it comes to a lot of elements relating to issues revolving around white privilege in America. I've been burnt too. However, there are politicians that I do trust. Some of them I have voted for. Okay? I do not back this defund the police thing that is going on. I'm very upset about it. I don't know. Let me just read this to you. This is from the New York Post. It's titled, NYC Black Lives Matter leader Hawk Newsome on race, activism, and gentrification. Nobody does intimidating like Hawk Newsome. He's supposed to be intimidating? Really? Maybe the person who wrote this was white. I don't know. The most influential Black Lives Matter leader in New York, Newsome stands 6'6" and has no problem getting inches from your face, staring down from behind dark shades and blowing smoke from a cigar. So he's dramatic. He's dramatic and he's tall. So I guess that equates to intimidating. Well, maybe if you're short and you're not used to being around dramatic people. Someone needs to challenge Hawk Newsome for his position. That's what I would like to see. And it needs to be a woman. A woman needs to challenge him for his position. That would do a little something. Anyways, on a recent late afternoon in the South Bronx, the 43-year-old activist agreed to meet a Post reporter just after giving a heated interview to Fox News that went viral. In it, he said that if Black Lives Matter protesters didn't get what they wanted, quote, they will burn down the system, end quote. Quote, we don't want white people here, end quote, Newsome told the Post, still fired up as he walked near Yankee Stadium, gesturing at the majestic pre-war apartments on the Grand Concourse in a brilliant sunset. What does he mean by here? in America, on Earth. And who is we? Because it's not me. It's not Candace Owens. It's not Colin Powell. But let me continue. So this Hawk Newsome person is saying, we don't want white people here. He's not speaking for me. He's not speaking for at least 50% of the Black Americans that are currently alive, that exist. He sounds like a goddamn racist. Is he a black supremacist? What if this was reversed? I would say that he would be very upset to read an interview that the New York Post could theoretically conduct with David Duke, who is a white supremacist. Let's say David Duke were to suddenly gain headway again in the mainstream media, and he would start running around screaming, we don't want black people here. Most people wouldn't support that. Not just black people, but white people. But here's what's ironic. Here's what Hawk Newsome doesn't seem to understand. If it were not for the white people who are here, he wouldn't be getting exposure right now, because who's really behind a lot of this Black Lives Matter propaganda right now? It's white supremacists from my point of view. It's people who do want to create a race war. They want to prop up black supremacists, like this man appears to be, so that they can have an excuse to create this theoretical race war and make life very difficult for the people who Hawk Newsome is claiming to represent. But let's continue. We don't want white people coming in and raising our rent. Okay. So in that case, he needs to create an environment to where there's more African Americans who own the properties where the black people he claims to represent reside. That's point number one. You can't be a supporter of black people if you come gentrify their neighborhoods. Stay the F out of our communities. Okay, so he wants to live in an environment that is completely owned by African Americans. So he's a separatist. He's proposing segregation. I wonder if he's ever thought about becoming an expat. I went through a phase, and I still may be in that phase at times, to where I thought to myself, I want to live in Wakanda, but for African Americans, not Africans, because I'm not African, I'm African American. But in order to create an American Wakanda, I'd have to find a whole bunch of driven African Americans who are completely ready to cut ties with America, who are self-sufficient financially, who are not dependent upon the American system to continue to grow their wealth. And we'd have to buy land somewhere that's completely separate from America. It would take a lot. I mean, really, a guy like Hawk Newsome would be better off maybe just moving to Jamaica or Trinidad or Haiti. Him and Shaun King should get together and build a community specifically for Black Lives Matter people who are about defunding the police, and they should all get together and go to Haiti. That's a solution, because no matter what, they're not going to be happy in America. And there's some people who want to try to stick it out in America, make it to 10 years from now, and keep building, keep having something really great going on, okay? But for the people who don't want to be here anymore, yeah, there needs to be other options, but you got to realize that in order to create other options, you can't be in someone else's house and make demands when you're not a part of the foundation that built that house. At least not a part of the power players who built that house. And you can't just be like, we want this, we want that, because you're never going to get it. That is why I'm mad at certain Democrats. You know who I liked, and I still like her, but I don't know if she thought about exactly what she was doing when she was saying these things? Marianne Williamson, okay? I really like Marianne Williamson as a person, but when she started talking about the reparations thing, that was... I'm sure it did get a lot of a certain type of African American on her side, but is it realistic? No. And it really enables a mindset that's more so dwelling on the past than focusing on the future. You got to keep in mind that the young generation coming up right now, due to their parents' failings, unfortunately, they're not as closely linked to what happened during slavery as even my generation is. Which in a way is sad, because it would be nice for young people to be more, in touch with their roots. But is it necessarily bad that they're not still angry about slavery? Maybe not. That's why I am a little upset when it comes to, people trying to make this big push for racism again. Because the younger generation, they're not as in touch with it. Which does pave the way for a future of racism not being. It pushes for a future of one race, the human race, not black versus white, not this separation between Asians, people who consider themselves Latin, because I don't consider Latin to be a race, but some people do, opposed to white and all this other kind of crap. I mean, there's so many. I mean, what are the multiracial kids gonna do? Why are you forcing them to pick a side? But anyway, let's continue in this article. He's well known and well liked in the neighborhood where he grew up and still lives. In his childhood apartment, where he shares with his younger sister, I'm not gonna name her, and his mother. So he still lives with his mom. Okay. And I'm not opposed to you still living with your mom. Not at all. Not at all. But okay. As he walks, he fist bumps old friends, hugs others with an almost teddy bear embrace, joking and showing a softer side. They all call him Walt. My dad was the same way, Newsome said. He'd be out playing dominoes and knew everybody. He was like the mayor. Okay, I'm going to stop there. He was like the mayor. That's what he said. All right. Well, he wasn't the mayor, though. He was like the mayor, but he wasn't the mayor. And that's what Hawk needs to realize. Hawk is saying black people don't trust politicians, but in actuality, Hawk is a politician. Here's what Hawk needs to do. I don't know if Hawk has any sort of a college education or not, or a traditional background, but it seems to me that if he doesn't, he needs to go back to school. He needs to get the credentials to become a politician. Because that's what he is. That's what he is. And he probably could get himself elected to an office or something. And then maybe in time he could become an actual mayor and not be like a mayor. Because in order to actually create the kind of change that he really probably wants for the people that he claims to represent, he will have to go through the proper channels, because I'm pretty sure that he doesn't really want to leave the United States of America. I've known guys like Hawk throughout my life. Guys like him usually don't like me very much. And there's reasons why. But I would like to see Hawk not be so angry. I think that there's probably a lot of really good qualities that Hawk embodies. But if Hawk continues on the path that he's on right now, he's not going to last very long. He's going to get in a lot of trouble. So I'm going to go ahead and let that be the end of today's podcast.